Our next panel, it's one that I'm really, really excited about, that connects a lot to the last question on artificial intelligence. Because AI, it's a general purpose technology, right? Akin to the internet, akin to electricity. In fact, the way we stream electricity, we will one day be streaming artificial intelligence. That's how pervasive it's going to become. But up until this point, our main contact with it has been social media, and that hasn't necessarily gone so well. So how do we make sure this next chapter with AI, it's human-centric, our voices are involved, and that we have choice? So it's my pleasure to introduce to the panel, we have Surman, Raffi Krikorian, Beth Noveck, and Dava Newman. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
All right. I didn't know you were Dave.
I wasn't. Hi, everyone. Dava Newman. Yeah, director of the MIT Media Lab, and I'm so happy to be joined by Mark from Mozilla, Raffi from Emerson Collective, and Beth from Northeastern, as well as State of New Jersey. So we are delighted to have a really important conversation with you about AI and the human social necessity designed for people, by people, for people, and kind of that social good. So, of course, we know the presence of AI, but let's concentrate on kind of designing it with intentionality. We have an amazing visionary panel here with a lot of expertise. They're going to tell you what's going on right now in that human-centered AI internet that we can see. We have to flip the paradigm, but if we get it right, we have a great chance of really empowering and lifting everyone up. So let's start first with, we're thinking about catalyzing innovation through open source and public. We've heard a lot about the private sector, but public AI initiatives. Mark, going to ask you to start us with kind of open source AI initiatives. Tell us what you're doing at Mozilla and beyond and partnerships. We have a lot to learn.
Well, thanks. And before talking about open source, I want to really ground us in what I think the question here is, which is who owns the future? And where can we direct it? Because as we've just heard, where AI took social media isn't probably a direction we're all happy with. And part of the question there is like, who owned that generation of it? And so before getting to open source, I really want to talk about this idea of public AI. And for us, we really think more and more about the need for there to be a public option in addition to a corporate option in where AI goes. And if you think back, let's say, to the Model T, nobody really could have imagined that we needed the kind of investment that we would need at a public level to build the interstate system, that we would need that kind of public infrastructure in order for us to have the benefits of what the automobile became, or that we would need the kind of public transit investments that came later. Similarly, when the first commercial broadcasters, television broadcasters, came online, we couldn't imagine that we would really need PBS to be a counterpoint, in addition to the commercial system, to get what we wanted out of broadcasting. And I think we're at that moment where we need to ask the question, what is the public option, the public lane, where we can direct a portion of where AI goes as public infrastructure, as public goods? And open source is actually really a main way that we can make that happen, in that it is a way we can build digital goods that are owned in common, that combine public investment, that combine private investment, that combine philanthropic investment, and combine the creativity of like tens of thousands, hundreds of millions of people. And so when I think about that, really I also think about the ownership of some of that set of AI building blocks, the stuff that we talk about, a general purpose technology that we use to build things with AI. And a project, and I'll just mention one for now, that we are really excited to be trying to encourage and grow is the Allen Institute for AI is building a model called Olmo. And it's kind of like Llama. It's an open source generative AI model. What's interesting about that, and there's other nonprofit labs, national labs around the world working on this kind of thing, is that it's end-to-end open source. It means anybody could build on that. Anybody could take it anywhere, which is not actually true of, say, something like Llama, which is sort of open source-ish. But also it's owned by a nonprofit, just like Linux is, just like Mozilla is. And that's a critical piece. The ownership is just as important as the thing itself, because that means it's something that will be held in the public interest in perpetuity. And I want to get into that ownership question in addition to the tech question, if we want to look at what's the human benefit.
Great, thank you. And Raffi, I know you're doing so much too, and let's kind of think about what's the social benefit. You're really doubling down. I think, how do we level the playing field?
Yeah, well, let me start with maybe an example that I think about a lot. So I'm fortunate enough that I'm on a board of an organization called Medic, and what we do is we build open source software for community health workers in Western and somewhat Eastern Africa as well. And in those situations, we don't want to be using AI technologies that are fully closed because we don't believe that the people who created those technologies have the sensitivities to work in the communities that we're working in. Community health workers are people who don't have medical training, who go village to village because they love the people there and provide first-line care and connect people with actual medical professionals when needed. So in situations like COVID, they're the ones providing vaccines. They're the ones providing tracking what community health looks like. And in these situations, they want to have control over what that technology looks like that provides them information and gives them the superpowers needed to provide the care to the individuals. So for them and for us, like open is the only actual solution here because like we're such a small community where we have our own way of operating, our own methodologies, and we want to be able to contribute. We're developers in a lot of ways. Like they're not developers in the Western sense of the word, that we're writing software to be deployed to hundreds of millions of people. We're writing offline software that works on limited smartphones that go into thousands of people, maybe only sometimes hundreds of people, and we want full control over that stack. And so in order to keep the balance, like where power lay in the system, we want to be working in these open networks. So I think a lot about how this notion of openness allows for these small local communities who have really their own sense of individuality to find themselves in these bigger pieces of technology and how we can put them all together again.
Yeah, I want to double down on what we're hearing from both of my colleagues here, which is this notion that we need to empower the people who are using these tools to be the builders of these tools. So for example, we're working with Innovate Public Schools out of California, which is a parent activist network, together with our AI for Impact clinic, where what we're doing is we're building open source, mission-driven, public interest tech with the communities of people who will use them. So that means parents of kids with disabilities, 20% of whom have an IEP in a public school, an individualized education program which determines the rights and benefits they receive from the school, but that document is 100 pages of legalese in a PDF. So instead, we can use a little AI to make it translatable into other languages, to help them summarize it, to help them advocate for themselves. But that's a story really of empowering them and of being driven by what they need and want, where they're developing the tools and we're building them together. So I think as we're talking about public AI and open AI tools, we're not just talking about the bottom layer of the stack. We have to go all the way up the stack and be thinking about what it is that we're building, which is technology to solve hard problems that matter to people in their lives, and to be thinking about what is that mission-driven tech and how we get it built, and how we're educating the next generation of kids who want to build that responsible technology together with the communities we're serving.
Exactly. And Beth, let's see with you too. So let's talk a little bit more about data ownership and through decentralization. You know, let's really hit that on, we do see a future. We envision that future, that brighter future, where it's decentralized AI for all, ethical, empowers people, as you said, all of our kids, you know, raising people up. So how do these, you know, decentralized AI systems, how can we protect individual data rights and individuals and afford greater autonomy?
So part of the way I think that we're going to do that, and I think, you know, again, Project Liberty has been doing a great job about coming up with the stories and the metaphors and the urgency by which we're starting to address these questions, continuing to address them. But what that means is we really have to be talking to and engaging with and centering both citizen and worker voice in these conversations. So what's exciting to me is that the AI is helping us to do that faster, at greater scale, and in ways that we've never been able to do before. So with my other hat as the Chief AI Strategist for New Jersey, we've gone out and we've asked our both public and private sector workers about their attitudes towards AI, what they know about AI. And you know what they told us? 5,000 public sector workers got back to us, and 88% of them said, I don't know anything about AI. I don't use AI. And yet we want to depend on them to be able to take these technologies, to build them in the public interest, to mandate and to create an impetus for the decentralization we're talking about, and then to build the tech for social good on top of it, that means we have to start with education. So I'm very glad that Governor Murphy in New Jersey has said, I want every worker to know about AI, and we've already trained 10,000 workers in New Jersey in AI, and we've built an open source, openly licensed content consortium called Innovate US, where across the US, in red states and blue states, we are now training workers in AI to ensure that we can have these conversations about responsible use, data decentralization, what are the right and responsible uses of this tech. And that means we have to be thinking about how do we use this tech to engage with everybody.
Thank you. And Raffi, you can riff on that a little bit. Now,
Yeah,
how are we empowering the communities and individuals?
Yeah, I mean, my brain goes into two ways. I know, Dava, you're really interested in educating kids about AI, so I'll leave that to you. But I also spend a lot of time wearing my Emerson hat, thinking about indigenous communities. So, like, one of our grantees is a group of Hawaiian researchers, and what they recognize from the indigenous people of Hawaii is that their DNA is used constantly as part of the drug manufacturing process. Like, there's a lot of information that happens in those communities, and people are trying to understand why they are drug resistant or not drug resistant, why certain DNA structures enable you to fight diseases better. So these people have had their DNAs been effectively extracted and used as part of drug pipelines for decades. So we're trying to figure out ways to actually give them data sovereignty again, allow them to trust the system so they can engage on their own terms. So, like, figuring out how to empower these small communities to own their own data, figure out what data communes might look like, what data consortia might look like that can have proper licensing techniques, etc. But as my colleague here said, it all starts with education, like being able to show them, A, what they should be expecting from all of us, B, that it's actually possible, and then C, starting to build with them in their communities and giving them that power back. It's sort of like shifting power back to those communities.
Exactly. Mark, go ahead.
Can I get a little nerdy for a second?
Absolutely. This is the nerd panel. Didn't you know?
Oh, I forgot. So, I mean, the other thing I want to say to build on this is if we're thinking about democratizing AI, being in control of our data, but also the whole experience, one of the things I think we have to think about is that the bottom and the top of the stack are really going to blend into each other. And what we mean by a developer, the idea that there are others out there who are the makers of this stuff, is going to start to disappear. And we start to see that even with Microsoft Copilot or what people are doing with coding in OpenAI or in ChatGPT. You're looking at coding being something coming closer and closer to all of us. And I think that is just going to accelerate and accelerate. And what it means to be a developer is going to change. And in that, then this question of who controls that system and whether it is open and public, who controls the authoring environment, is really critical. And it's where Mozilla is going to try to step in, and we stepped in 20 years ago, is if you go back 20 years, if you wanted to create an interactive application on the web, you had to do it in ActiveX. You had to do it in Flash or something like that, something controlled by some company that if it wasn't compatible with your browser, you would get an error. And really, the victory of Firefox was it introduced JavaScript into the mainstream. And we need to look at how we do something like that with these copilots. Where is the open version of how we write the future, literally, that all of us can use? And so we've set up Mozilla AI. Raffi's been helping with that a little bit to try to popularize and make easy to use these open source AI technologies, so that anybody could author with them. And I think that's going to be critical.
Thanks. And again, partnerships and working alliances, right, to get this decentralized. I do want to go back to our kids, the future, right? Getting everyone at the table. So and from the media, we have, Day of AI. Every day is a day of AI. But May 13th, we just claimed it. Day of AI. Go to dayofai.org. You know why? Because we have 115 countries, tens of thousands of students and teachers. Students are actually helping teach the teachers. Guess what? We need family resources. That literacy question, AI literacy for all. Because this technology is here, it's being used, we have a chance, right? We all design for the human-centric experience. So if we're very focused, I think, on that vision of how we're lifting everyone up, again, starting with the next generation, starting with there are some students and some young folks here in the audience, right? It's on you. We need to help empower you. We have to get this right. But that's the vision. I think that's the equitable, ethical way that we kind of flip this narrative. So we're going to culminate in how do we catalyze these efforts for social good? That's the fundamental question. We want to leave you all with some things to think about as well. So the final question then is for social change, maybe some applications. How do we make education better? But what do we do for climate? What do we do with the big health and wellness, that individualized, personalized experiences if we get it right for really humanity's biggest challenges? Over to you.
Where are we going? I'm going first.
Well, this way. We're going down now.
I mean, I think I'm going to be a little bit of the broken record in that the key, and it sits in Raffi's MEDIC example, is that there is technology that is owned in the public interest, whether that is governments that we trust or nonprofits or collaboratives, that people who are trying to do public good can just pick up and use. They're not going to be AI for the public good people. They're going to be public good people powered by AI. And the AI is going to be easier and easier for them to solve that MEDIC mobile question, or easier and easier to solve that climate question. And we see that kind of creativity of some people working in the public interest, some nonprofits doing that already. But it's about popularizing that and making sure as it gets popularized, and this is critical, they have access to tools that operate, are built, are controlled in the public interest, and not that they're going to have the rug pulled out from them, a year from now, 2 years from now, as the bill has to happen. And, that's the problem with some of the stuff, and this is kind of last thing I'll say, that is claiming to be open source out there. You have in the Llama license this very funny thing, Llama being the open source Meta large language model, that after 700 million users, it's no longer open source. So imagine the UN went to adopt and build something on top of Llama. They would very quickly get to that threshold, and it would no longer be open source. We have to watch out for stuff like that.
Yeah, so real open. And citizen scientists, right? Citizen activists, citizen developers. This is all merging.
Exactly. I mean, to build on to Mark, I think the thing that we really need to do is we need to change the narrative. I think we need to, we're all developers in this room, going on to what Mark was saying. For me, when I wrote code 10 years ago, 20 years ago when I was in college, it looks very different than how I write code today. Writing code today looks even super different than what it did a year ago because all these technologies are coming in front of us. And I think we're rapidly getting to the place that writing code is now no longer the thing of nerds in the corner, but literally all of you, of just you're doing something, you're training your computer, and your computer's about to then learn from you and start executing on that over and over again. Now you don't, so imagine a world where we're all builders. You don't want those tools to be closed. You want those tools. You want to be able to poke open those tools, use those tools in the way that you want to go use them. So I think it all just starts with us reminding people that we're all builders. Power to write code and power to change the way the world works actually rests with all of us, not with just a few people building these systems.
Revenge of the English majors. We can all do it today, but I'll remind us, and this is not unique to AI, is what it comes down to is what's the problem we're solving? What are the questions we're actually grappling with and working on? And so the notion that we're not only, if we have the right tech, can be empowered to each be a builder, and we can be empowered, though, to work on things like the problems that you're talking about, that I can have kids who are helping take 6 call centers in Massachusetts and help all those call center operators answer 2 million people's questions about their health insurance faster and better so they know if they can go to a doctor or not, who are helping environmental justice groups apply for federal grants because they have a piece of AI that can help even the smallest town or nonprofit now compete with a big city to actually write that grant application. So I want us to not forget, number one, the government is full of challenges and problems that need solving, that are in the public interest and that are mission-driven. And now, through partnerships and collaboration, everybody can be a participant with the right tools in being part of those solutions.
I think so. So what we've heard, I think, is kind of changing the narrative as well, really with a focus on imagining that future. And I think to sum up, but this has to work for 100% of humanity. Let's walk it back. Let's get the right questions. Is it responsible? Is it trusted? Right? Is it for all? And if it's not serving all of us, guess what? Not good enough. Back to the nerds. Okay, better developers, but just, kind of keeping those in the forefront. What is the social good? That's the challenge. I think that's the fundamental question. And then we come to the table with our tools and in alliances. I think you heard a lot about alliances between industry, academia, governments. That's when we know we can get it right. I'm optimistic.
I'm optimistic.
Thank you.
The future looks good, at least from our panel's perspective. Thank you all very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I think we're supposed to go that way.
For a talk on how to bring out the best in people, please welcome Jaron Lanier.